Okay, step 2. Once we have our grid drawn in our sketchbook, we just divided this part in half, and then we divided this part in half and drew a line. Okay, so now I'm going to take my image and I'm going to fold it so that I'm only seeing this top half. Let me see if I can get something to hold that down. If you have a paper clip or another way that you can hold the image so that you see just that part. Okay, so this is the upper right quadrant. So we are drawing this image here, right here. Let me move this a little bit closer so that we can see everything. Okay, so this is positive and negative space drawing. So I'm going to show you. Positive space is the pumpkin, the stem, the flower. It's the subject. Kind of like in reading, you look for the main character, the main subject in a story. Here in drawing, it is the actual objects are the subject. So this is positive space. Negative space is the space around the object. So I'm going to actually look at this negative space so that I know how to position my pencil and draw this pumpkin to proportion in this space. So I'm looking, I'm using my observation skills. I notice there's a little bit of a gap here between the edge of the paper, edge of our drawing, and the pumpkin. So I'm going to kind of guesstimate right there might be the beginning of this pumpkin. And if I just make kind of, what shape would you call this? I look at this shape, like a top part of an oval, and I notice that it goes all the way to this side. And I'm looking, it's just below halfway. Probably this dark mark is about halfway, so just below. So I'm gonna look over here. This might be about halfway, and just below that might be right here. So I need to draw an oval shape that connects this. I notice that there's kind of a V shape here. So it starts here and goes up and a little bit flat and then comes down. So I'm gonna go from here up, a little bit flat, and then come down. Notice my first line is not the one I wanna keep, so I'm gonna erase. If you haven't drawn with me before, I always tell students that when we sketch, we wanna loosen our pencil grip. We don't wanna hold nice and tight like this. Let me show you on a blank page. So if I were to draw like that, because I'm holding my pencil like I would in math, and this line is not what I wanted, and I need to erase it, I go to erase it, and even though I'm pressing super hard with my eraser, notice that you can still see this line. It's because I pressed really, really hard. So even if I put my finger on it and I feel it, I have actually made a dent in the paper. Go ahead and try that on another sheet of paper, not on this demonstration, and just see. So this is what we do not want. We do not want that. We want to draw so light. See how I'm holding my pencil pretty far back, and I'm just lightly pressing so that if we make a mistake, we can easily erase the line without a trace. Okay, and if we need to go darker because we want to keep that line, we have that option. But if we start off dark and that's not what we want, then we've taken away that option. Okay, so coming back here, I have the start of my pumpkin. Now I'm going to look at the stem. If I'm looking at even dividing this section into a grid, halfway down this way and halfway down this way, the stem starts in the middle almost of the square and it curves up and to the right. And then there's kind of like the circle part. This is the edge of the vine that got cut. And then it curves down. Okay, so I'm gonna maybe look right here. And I'm gonna start here and then curve up and then make this edge of the stem here, and then it's gonna curve back down. Now I'm looking here, so if I put my pencil here, this does look like it's about in the middle. Now I'm gonna compare that to my sketch here. If I divide this into half here, look, my pumpkin's too high. So it's kind of like that what's the difference game, if you've ever played that in highlights. I used to love that in Highlights magazine. I actually think it's in the back of People magazine now too. There's two very similar images, but there's maybe 10 things that are different, and you have to find those 10 things. So hopefully you guys know what I'm talking about. I play that game when I draw. I look for what's the difference between my drawing here and what I'm copying. So that's what good drawers do. Okay, and then maybe I notice here it goes back and then curves down. So this goes back and then curves down a little bit more dramatically like that. Okay, so this is just the rough draft, guys. We will go back in and add our details, because if I started with details here, once I drew this over here, and then I notice later on that this does not match up, then I'd have to erase all of that. So we don't add details until the very end. Okay, here in this quadrant, we are going to do a little bit of the seed of the sunflower, just right down here in this corner. Make a little bit of a seed. This is an organic shape, right? This petal, so it kind of curves up to a point and curves back down. So I'm gonna do my best to make this look like a petal, and then add some more petals. Here's where I say it's okay to have a little bit of artistic freedom. That means that you can make this just a little bit different if you'd like. You are the artist here. Okay, so I have this first quadrant pretty much drawn. I am leaving out these two leaves, so let's add those. About in the middle is this little pointy leaf, teeny guy. And then just above that, like in between, maybe if we go across here and this guy. So if we go across here, and then this guy is this bigger leaf. Okay, so I'm ready to move on to my next quadrant.